So many of us know coffee to be amazing, but what do we really know about caffeine? Yes, it's known for being the world's most used legal psychoactive stimulant, but how did it derive there? And why? First, the how. Caffeine behaves as a stimulant for the human central system of nerves. Once reaching the brain, the most noticeable effect is alertness. The reason we feel sleepy, tired, and drowsy in the first place is because of something the body produces called adenosine, which is the receptor that promotes sleepiness. Caffeine essentially blocks this natural produced receptor and thus keeps us from feeling sleepy. It momentarily gives us a burst of energy. So it's no wonder why when we need a kick, we go straight to a cup of coffee, since that's probably the most direct way to get caffeine into our blood. Take for instance the early riser. In many cases, it's difficult for someone to even function at a steady pace without, or at least prior to, that first early morning jolt of caffeine. But then, boom, we kind of feel like a super version of ourselves post the bean water consumption. Now I know you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Well, nothing, except the second part of the question, the why. And to answer this part of the question, we must first acknowledge one thing. Humans are naturally drawn to stimulation. It's why we're never the same after our first time. It's also responsible for always seeking that next thrill. We need to be stimulated, and caffeine gives us the perfect excuse to be as unproductive as we want to be at times, knowing that all we have to do is get our hands on something loaded with it to switch on the old energy booster or adenosine blocker. So why? For quick, convenient, and highly effective stimulation, which subtly makes way for something that could become problematic: dependency. Because let's be clear, dependency can breed addiction, and addiction to anything has potential to be bad news. We've seen how it's negatively affected individuals, families, even companies. Allowing dependency to take over our lives typically doesn't end well. So as much as I hate to tell you this, the answer to the why is kind of because of dependency, which brings me to where I am right now. Over the years, I've allowed myself to become so attached to the effects of caffeine that essentially it sort of no longer even feels like a dependency anymore, but more like routine. Of course, I know that it's because of the dependency that it even felt this way. Now, I personally never want to fall into the state of dependency on anything superficial, even if they are things that I might like and love. So whether it's video games, certain foods, drinks, social media, including YouTube, other recreational activities, or caffeine, I will dig it in and find the detachment of whatever it is that I'm over consuming. And in this case, it happens to be caffeine. So what I have decided to try and do for myself is to avoid major sources of caffeine for a total of 30 days. No tea, no coffee. These happen to be my primary sources of caffeine, and I usually have one of the three very near me, depending on what I'm doing and what part of the day it is. What I need to know in the end is 1, how having no caffeine will impact me physically, mentally, and productively. And 2, how long will it take my body to adapt to functioning without it? I do like to think that I'm a strong-willed person when I need to be. So this should be a piece of cake, right? So here in the beginning, I'm so far seeing no real issues. I'm having no problems getting out of bed in the morning like I thought I would, and I'm not particularly dragging throughout the day either. However, what I can say is that during the moments where I'm here at the computer, I usually have something I can sip while I work. So here during my abstinence of caffeine, my brain tells my hands that something is missing. This is obviously just a little bit of muscle memory from my usual routine, and I'm not terribly bothered by it. I think I'm doing quite okay with this so far. So one question someone might ask themselves during a detox is, why am I even doing this? It hurts no one that I'm enjoying XYZ. I should just quit it or not even begin it in the first place. But think about this. No one really chooses their dependencies or addictions. It happens from a loss of control over the ability to rationalize our best decisions. Put short, we unknowingly hand over our decision making to whatever it is that we're dependent upon. It's within that we will find any reason at all to justify it or make it okay and to not lose that thing. For me, it's about self-awareness and self-control when I'm doing a detox. So it's been about a week and a half, and I gotta be honest, I don't think I'm doing as well this week as I was in the first week. That first week was way easier to get through than this one. Even this early on in the journey, I'm really feeling some slight side effects from dropping caffeine. Thankfully, I've only had one headache, But I think what's really starting to take a toll on me is low energy, or at least what I think is low energy. Full transparency, I was totally missing caffeine by this point. So much so that I thought about changing this very experiment to just quitting coffee, just so I can have an energy drink at least. But anyway, what started happening was that I found myself taking more frequent breaks during my work times. I dragged a little bit more also, and strangely, somehow I got bored more easily and ended up walking away from work sooner than I needed to. To my surprise, the only time that I did not feel this way was when I was out on my walks. So naturally, I just added more exercise to my day, and I think I had a breakthrough at this point. I sort of discovered that just because I quit caffeine, it didn't mean that I had to quit having energy altogether. So why not just tap into my body's natural source and shake that draggy feeling that way? And also maybe solve some of the boredom issues. So I just ramped up my daily exercise routine. Having my heart pumping so good made me feel tremendously better than just grabbing an energy drink or some coffee. And when I had enough of staring at my computer screen, I just dropped to the floor for some tried and true good old push-ups. A meditation or reflection moment here and there also worked. So did a full-on nap. But adding either of these was definitely better than becoming frustrated with work or nodding off at my desk. And it was through this process I was able to breeze by the next couple of weeks with no real complaints and nothing significantly different to report. And that's a good thing. So fast forward to 28 days, and unfortunately this is where my experiment ended. I know 28 days is a weird amount of time to give something like this to do, but there was an unforeseen turn of events at the end of the experiment, and I had to spend those last 2 days of my detox recording, which involved singing, and I kind of made my throat sore. So at the end of the experiment, I just had myself some tea to soothe my throat. I really needed it. So I cut my experiment short, but I think 28 days is still significant enough to get realistic results. And here are mine. The two questions I wanted to find out at the end of this thing were, how would having no caffeine affect me physically, mentally, and productively? And then, how long would it take my body to adapt to functioning without it? The beginning was a little bit swingy, and I was unsure if I was getting legit results from not having caffeine, or maybe it was something else. Perhaps just not eating or resting properly. With the minor headache I had, the boredom, and the frequent fidgety feeling, I really couldn't tell if it was from me not having caffeine or not. But that fell off at the end of the second week into the third week. So by that third week, when I added a little bit more exercise and proper downtime, I could actually see that my body was actually going through slight withdrawals those first 2 weeks. And the things I was experiencing were the result of that. So in the end, I was able to get more productive work done. And I don't mean lots of work, I mean more productive work, quality work. So my second question of how long it would take my body to adapt to not having caffeine, quite simply put, it took less than 3 weeks. Around the second week mark is when my body recognized that it would not be getting this external stimulant, and it did what it had to do to continue functionality and productivity. I always find it fascinating to discover what the human body is capable of without external or outside influence or interruptions. When we take away our stimulants and enhancers and whatever else, our bodies really do know what to do. I think for the most part, we are more in the way of ourselves than not. If we're not able to remove all these extra things completely, I really do think that a detox is the least we can do for ourselves. Every now and again, we can at least give our bodies a break from having to compensate for the way we think we're assisting it. Now, I would be telling you a lie if I said that I would never drink coffee again. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But like everything else, there needs to be moderation. Even though coffee isn't the worst thing for you, remember that it is possible to have too much of a good thing. And that's my experience with the caffeine detox. Is it about that time for you to start kicking some habits and addictions? We can definitely talk about it down in the comments. And afterwards, check out this video right here. YouTube thinks you might like it next. And I'll talk to y'all in the next video.